A deep red state turning purple? One Senate candidate believes Mississippi is about to shock the nation. Mississippi has long been written off as unwinnable territory for Democrats. But what if that perception is dead wrong? In a recent interview, Scott Colon, the Democratic candidate challenging incumbent Republican Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith, made a bold claim. Mississippi is far more competitive than anyone realizes, and he has the track record to prove it. Colon points to the 2023 gubernatorial race as evidence. The Democratic challenger lost to the Republican incumbent by just 27,000 votes. According to Colon, had that campaign received adequate funding earlier, they could have reached voters beyond traditional TV audiences and potentially changed the outcome entirely. But here's where his argument gets interesting. Colon isn't just another candidate making optimistic predictions. He's a sitting district attorney who won what many considered an impossible race back in 2015. Running on a criminal justice reform platform against a 27-year incumbent, Colon had the courage to challenge the tough-on-crime status quo. He advocated for prioritizing violent crime while taking a smarter, rehabilitation-focused approach to nonviolent offenses. The result? He won, and he's been re-elected twice since then. In 2023, Colon won his district by 10 percentage points more than Vice President Kamala Harris did in 2024. Let that sink in. A local Democrat outperforming a national Democratic ticket in Mississippi by double digits. His message is straightforward. Mississippi needs a senator who puts the state's interests above Washington politics, and according to Colon, Senator Hyde-Smith has repeatedly failed that test. The healthcare crisis looming over Mississippi forms the centerpiece of Colon's campaign. With Republicans threatening to strip away healthcare coverage from millions of Americans, the stakes couldn't be higher for Mississippi families. Colon describes Senator Hyde-Smith as public enemy number one when it comes to putting Mississippi's health care at risk. The Affordable Care Act subsidies that countless Mississippians rely on to afford their health insurance are now in jeopardy. If that federal money disappears, working families across the state will face devastating consequences. Where is Senator Hyde-Smith on this issue? According to Colon, she's been virtually silent. Instead of fighting for Mississippi families on Capitol Hill, she voted to give permanent tax cuts to people making over $600,000 annually. As Colon points out, very few Mississippians fall into that income bracket. Those beneficiaries live in New York, California, Boston, and Washington, D.C., the cost of those tax cuts for the wealthy. Colon alleges that 140,000 working Mississippians could lose their health care, and at least 8 hospitals across the state face potential closure. Think about that math for a moment. Cutting health care for 140,000 Mississippians and risking 8 hospital closures to fund tax breaks for the ultra-wealthy living in coastal states. What does that say about whose interests are being prioritized? But here's the challenge Colon faces. How do you convince voters to break from a political identity that may run generations deep? For many Mississippians, voting Republican isn't just a political choice. It's tied to family tradition and personal identity. Colon's response reveals a two-pronged strategy. First, he emphasizes that countless Democrats in Mississippi have been completely ignored by the National Party. When these voters stay home, they're responding to a clear message. We're not going to invest in winning your vote. This creates a cycle of apathy. Democratic voters feel abandoned, so they don't turn out. Low turnout reinforces the perception that the state is unwinnable, and the cycle continues. Colon believes he can break that cycle by giving Mississippi Democrats a compelling reason to vote. His biography and proven record of winning tough elections provide that reason. But his strategy goes beyond mobilizing the base. Colon has demonstrated an ability to win over voters in purple districts where Trump either won or came close to winning. How does he do it? By delivering a message that resonates across party lines. In 2015, his Smart on Crime platform connected with voters who were tired of failed tough-on-crime policies. Now, his message that Mississippi needs a senator who puts the state first taps into widespread frustration with Washington politicians. Here's a striking detail. Many Mississippi voters don't actually know Hyde-Smith's voting record. Cologne describes how the senator shows up for ribbon-cutting ceremonies, celebrating highway expansions, and Amtrak service improvements along the Gulf Coast. She takes credit for these projects in photo ops and press releases. But 90% of voters don't know she voted against the funding that made those projects possible. Once voters learn about this pattern, Cologne believes the race becomes far more competitive than anyone expects. His personal story adds another powerful dimension to his campaign. Cologne's mother was a judge who lost her first 2 elections before making history as the first African-American judge in their region of Mississippi. From her experience, Cologne learned what he calls a never-quit mentality. That determination defines his approach to this Senate race. He's committed to touching every voter, raising every dollar possible, and making sure Mississippians understand what's at stake in this election. So what would a Cologne victory actually mean for Mississippi? The answer lies in understanding Senate dynamics. When the chamber is closely divided, as it often is, individual senators from unexpected states can wield enormous influence. Cologne points to former Senator Joe Manchin as an example. As a Democrat from deep red West Virginia, Manchin became a pivotal swing vote. That position allowed him to deliver outsized benefits to his state. Being the deciding vote meant West Virginia's priorities got special attention. Contrast that with Hyde-Smith's approach. Cologne argues she has completely given away her voice and, by extension, Mississippi's voice in the Senate. She's a reliable rubber stamp for leadership rather than an independent advocate fighting for Mississippi's unique needs. He cites Alaska Senator Lisa Murkowski as a counterexample. When major legislation was being negotiated, Murkowski secured specific carve-outs and exceptions to protect Alaska's interests. She used her position to look out for her state. Why isn't Hyde-Smith doing the same for Mississippi? According to Cologne, it's because the state lacks an independent senator willing to put Mississippi first, regardless of party politics. Whether the president is a Democrat or Republican, Cologne pledges to always prioritize Mississippi's needs. He draws a particularly stark line. Under no circumstances would he pay for tax cuts for people making over $600,000 in other states by putting Mississippi's hospitals and health care at risk. That's non-negotiable. The economic reality facing Mississippi farmers provides another compelling angle. As the former Secretary of Agriculture, Hyde-Smith should be championing Mississippi's agricultural interests. Instead, farmers are struggling with the consequences of tariff policies. They can't sell soybeans to China. Equipment prices have surged, and their senator has been largely silent. Cologne calls this a total betrayal of Mississippi farmers. It's yet another example of why the state needs a senator who will be an independent voice, not a party loyalist. Beyond policy arguments, Cologne emphasizes the untapped potential of Mississippi's Democratic voters. These are people who never receive Democratic messaging. The National Party has essentially written them off, but Cologne has proven he can win these voters over with the right message and approach. He describes himself as the best bet in politics, backed by 3 key assets: a state full of voters hungry for a Democratic message, a proven track record of winning those voters, and an unshakable never-quit mentality. On the Republican side, there are already signs of nervousness. On the very day Cologne announced his campaign, the Republican Party threatened to have him investigated by the FBI. His crime? Creating a TikTok video based on a trending format about forgiveness. Hyde-Smith has also begun attacking Cologne with television ads. According to the candidate, these ads contain a bunch of lies. Why go negative so early? Cologne believes it's because Republicans privately understand that Mississippi is more competitive than they want Democrats to realize. This brings up a fascinating question about campaign strategy and media consumption. Cologne emphasizes that traditional TV advertising, while still important, misses a huge segment of voters, especially younger ones. Many people now consume all their content on phones and apps. Some don't even own televisions anymore. To reach these voters, campaigns need to go digital, knock on doors, and get creative. Voters respond to authenticity and innovation, not just the same old TV spots that have dominated political advertising for decades. The healthcare crisis provides the most immediate and tangible example of what's at stake. With Affordable Care Act subsidies set to expire, millions of Americans face skyrocketing premiums. Senator Raphael Warnock of Georgia has been documenting what this will look like, posting examples of premiums doubling, tripling, even quadrupling from 2025 to 2026. For Mississippi, a state with high rates of poverty and limited access to health care, this crisis could be catastrophic. Rural hospitals are already closing at an alarming rate. Without the ACA subsidies, more will follow. Entire communities could lose access to emergency care, maternity services, and basic medical treatment. Where is Mississippi's voice in preventing this disaster? According to Cologne, it's nowhere to be found. The Republican budget bill compounds these problems. Beyond threatening Medicaid coverage for 17 million Americans, the refusal to extend ACA subsidies puts another 24 million at risk. For a state like Mississippi, dependent on federal health care support, these cuts would be devastating. But Cologne faces an uphill battle in getting his message heard. Hyde-Smith rarely does press interviews, according to the candidate. In 6 years, she hasn't done a single press interview in Mississippi. She rarely speaks with local newspapers or television stations. Why the media blackout? Cologne believes it's because she can't defend her voting record. When you voted to give tax cuts to the wealthy while putting your state's health care at risk, when you've taken credit for projects you voted against, answering tough questions becomes impossible. As Hyde-Smith begins to make more public appearances, voters are starting to ask, where has she been? What has she actually done for Mississippi? And according to Cologne, they're responding enthusiastically when they hear the answers. The candidate reports record fundraising in his first month, but he needs more support to compete effectively. Mississippi isn't an expensive media market like New York, D.C., or Los Angeles. Advertising dollars go much further in reaching voters. That makes early donations particularly impactful. Cologne's pitch to potential supporters emphasizes Mississippi as a smart investment. The numbers show the state is competitive. He has a proven track record of winning difficult elections, and he brings that never-quit mentality his mother instilled in him. For Democrats looking at the Senate map, Mississippi represents an unexpected opportunity. While everyone focuses on the usual battleground states, a quiet revolution might be brewing in a state that's been ignored for far too long. The question is whether the National Party and grassroots donors will recognize this opportunity before it's too late. Can a state written off as deep red actually flip? Does Mississippi matter in this election cycle? If Scott Cologne has his way, the country is about to find out. His campaign represents a test of whether authentic local candidates with strong messages can overcome decades of partisan voting patterns and national neglect. Mississippi has been counted out before, but as Cologne's own electoral history shows, counting him out is a mistake. The question isn't whether he'll fight until the end. That's guaranteed. The question is whether he'll have the resources to get his message in front of every Mississippi voter who needs to hear it. What do you think? Can Mississippi actually be competitive in a Senate race? Or is this just another case of campaign optimism colliding with political reality? The answer may surprise everyone.
If you enjoyed the video, hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss any new videos.